Exploring polynomials. And polynomials are any term, a multi-termed item. And we are going to be looking at multiple different ones. And we're going to be looking today, focused in on what's happening at the ends, the left and the right, as it's going to positive and negative infinity on y. What's happening as it's crossing the x-axis. And the basic shape of the graph. And so, when we're looking at crossing the x-axis, we're looking at, does it bounce, wiggle, or cross? And so a bounce is where it's going to touch and go back the same direction it came from. A wiggle is going to kind of flatten out as it goes through the x-axis and then keep going through. But a cross is going to go straight through. It's not going to flatten out any. So we are going to look at these, and we're going to look at them in the graph as well. So we are going to, undo. We're going to look and see what's happening on the graph as we do these. So you can either do these on Desmos or with your Inspire calculator. When we do these, we're going to want to change the window to these settings, and I'll show you that when we go into the graph. We're opening up Desmos, and on Desmos, go up to the little wrench, and you can change your window settings by changing your x-axis to where it says negative 2.5 to positive 2.5, and the same thing on the y-axis. So I'll go ahead and type in the equation. Y equals 2 times x to the 4th power, and then also multiplying that times x minus 1. And if you'll see here, we have it go up and touch the axis and then come back down, and then it comes back through. So the first one is called a bounce, and the second one is a wiggle, or is a cross, excuse me. We'll look at it here again on the Inspire calculator. We're going to go up to the settings on this, and I know my phone is a little bit different spot, but that would be over in your Windows settings, and you're going to change that from X-min to negative 2.5, X-max to 2.5. I also change it from auto to a 1 scale, just because that's the way my graph paper that I provide for you is marked. That way it's easier for you to see what's going on. I'm going to do the same thing with Y-min at negative 2.5. And then we'll be changing the Y-max to 2.5. So we're going to go ahead and type in the same equation we just did. I'm just showing you how you can do it both on the Inspire and on the Desmos. And so it's already got f of x equals, and we're going to do 2x to the 4th times x minus 1. And it's going to give us the same exact graph. So again, we have that flattening out right about the origin. Sorry, I didn't mean to click on that. And then it flattens, goes down, and then comes back up and goes through. So that would be a cross here at 1, but a bounce there at the origin. We're going to go over to our paper, and we're going to actually sketch this. So we're going to go ahead and sketch that graph. And as we're getting close to the 0, it kind of flattened out. It came back down, and at that 1, it seemed to go straight back up through. And on this side, it came back down. And so at that 0, we had a bounce. At the 1, it crosses through. On the left-hand side, it was y was approaching negative infinity. And on the right-hand side, y was approaching positive infinity. This is all the information we got just from the graph. Now, at x equals negative 1, it's not doing anything with the x-axis, so it's a none. Now let's go ahead and actually look at the equation and find out some information. So we're going to find out which one of these pieces led me to each piece over here. So one of them was going to equal 0, one's going to equal 1, or one's going to equal -1. And so I'm going to set each factor equal to 0. That's when it's crossing the x-axis. And so 2x to the 4th equals 0. And that's the case whenever x to the 4th is equal to 0, which means x is equal to 0. And the other one was x minus 1. We want to know when it equals 0. And that was when x equals 1. And so the x to the 4th is the one that is going to give us the exponent for at 0. And so that was the 4. Another thing that will sometimes be called is the multiplicity. And it'll be called a multiplicity of 4. There was no exponent here, so that's going to be understood to be a 1. Now we're going to fill in the rest of it. So the sign of leading coefficient is going to come from your leading number. Is it positive or negative? And that leading number was positive, so positive. The degree is going to be created by adding all of your exponents. And so this one was not applicable because there wasn't one there. 4 plus 1, and so that means we have a 5th degree. And this is what you'll be doing throughout the entire assignment. I'm going to do one more with you. So let's go ahead and go over to problem number 4. And it shows this one because it has all 3 features. And we're going to talk about the other things that's a little bit different. So let's go ahead and type this in your graphing calculator. So we are looking here at the graph, and the -1 is flattened out, and it keeps going through to the other side, so that is a wiggle. But at 0, we don't flatten out any, so it goes straight through. That's a cross. At +1, it flattens out and comes back down. That is a bounce. So a bounce flattens out, goes back the same direction it started from, and the wiggle flattens out and goes on through. A cross, you're not going to see the flattening out effect. So when we're sketching this graph, we talked about it at 1, it flattened out. Let's get colors going to show up. It kind of flattens out and keeps going up. And this was coming straight down. And then at 0, it crosses through. And then at 1, it kind of flattened back out as it went through that 1 and came back down. And we talked about that at -1, we had the wiggle because it flattened out and went on through. At 0, we had it cross because it did not flatten out any. And then at 1, we had a bounce because it flattened out and went back the same direction it came from. So let's look over at the left inside. And on the left side, the y would approach -infinity because it's going on down. The right-hand side, y approaches -infinity because it's going down. And we're going to take and examine each of those pieces again. So that -5x equals 0. That's going to be whenever x equals 0. And since there's not an exponent written, that's understood to be a 1. So the exponent there is a 1. Now we're going to take the next piece. and that's the x minus 1 to the 6th equals 0. And so if I raise that to the 6th power, it's really not going to change anything. If I'm multiplying the same number times itself 6 times, that whole thing has to be 0. So that's the same as what it would be if I had x minus 1 equals 0. And so when I solve that, by adding the 1 to each side, that's when x is equal to 1. And so that one had that 6th exponent when x equals 1. And then the last one was x plus 1 to the 7th equals 0. And then, I'm going to change colors to that one. And so that's going to be whenever x plus 1 is equal to 0. So x, when I solve it, I end up with x is equal to negative 1. So it has x one at 7. And so now, if I add these three numbers, that's what's going to determine my degree. 7 plus 1 is 8. 8 plus 6 is 14. So this is the 14th degree. The sign of the leading coefficient. So that means I'm coming back over here. I'm looking at the number in front, and it was negative. And so the sign of the leading coefficient is negative. You are going to continue doing this for the 1 through 7 today. And then I want you to look back at the results you got for each of those after you're done, and then you're going to answer questions 8 through 14 based upon that information. On Monday, we are going to go through this and discuss it, make sure we understand what each of the pieces are, and then we're going to go backwards. We're going to go from the information you just found and come up with the equation. So today, when you're doing the sum up sheet, just kind of write down what you think each of those are. We're going to go over those answers on Monday to make sure that we are all in agreement.